A conversation with the new president of the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce, Zach Brandon, this morning on For the Record. Good morning, I'm Neil Heinen. As the Greater Madison region simultaneously continues its climb out of the recession and works to establish its identity in the global marketplace, one of the most important jobs in town is president of the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce. Outgoing President Jennifer Alexander set the stage with 9 years of positioning the chamber as a player in civic life in Madison. And when she announced her plans to retire, the board handed the reins to a former Madison small business owner, alderman, and State Department of Commerce administrator, Zach Brandon. And Brandon joins me this morning to talk about the state of the business sector in Madison and the challenges of 2013. Zach, good to see you. Thank you.
You too, Neil. Thanks for having me.
Just as a bit of introduction, many of our viewers this morning probably have seen you and heard from you in some of your various jobs here, but taking on the chamber's big job, what was the motivation? What were you thinking? What are you thinking in terms of leading this business group?
Well, I was unsure whether I would apply for the job, and it was certainly a well sought after job. 130 plus people applied for the job. They had a tremendous pool of applicants.
Pretty appealing position.
Yeah, I think so. And I may have been one of the last to actually put my name in. I had talked to some board members who had encouraged me to do it. For me, my hesitation wasn't. It's an amazing job, and it's an amazing opportunity. It's an amazing mantle in which to talk about the things that this community needs and should have. But I was unsure of whether both the community and the board were ready for the type of leadership and innovation that I would bring to the organization, that I wouldn't be happy with the status quo of the organization, that I would want to move the organization in different directions. I'd want to move the community in different directions. I would want to take my background as an alderman and as a small business owner, as a state economic development leader, and as somebody who worked with small businesses and early stage capital, helping them find money, to really think about how do we grow Madison's economy, how do we create wealth for our community, not just for the individual, but for the community as a whole. And but I thought I would never find out the answer to that question, whether they were ready to move it in a direction I would want to go unless I went through the process. And so the interviewing process may have been as much as me interviewing them as they were interviewing me about, are you ready for these types of things? And I started off my first interview with me saying, that I'm not your traditional chamber president. I'm something much different, but you have to tell me that you're ready for that, as in the organization.
What is the difference? Describe the difference.
I think that the chamber model nationally is very focused on regulation and taxes. It is sort of the mantra of the business voice. To me, I'm more focused on innovation and on growth, and I do believe that companies make decisions, and taxes and regulation have an implication, but I think there are 6 things that businesses use to make decisions. And so I have a larger view of what traditional economic development should look like. So one, it's access to your customers. If you can't sell your product, then you're not going to locate somewhere, you're not going to grow somewhere, you're not going to expand somewhere. It's access to a well-trained workforce. People have to be able to build or provide the service. It's access to a built-out infrastructure, and that's internet, that's roads, that's sewer, that's water, that's energy. It's access to capital. You have to have the money to be able to build or provide the service. It's and then it's cost. So cost is a piece of it, and taxes and regulation drive up cost, but they're a subset of cost. And so if you're just talking about one of the pieces of the puzzle and not talking about the entire puzzle, then I think you've missed the picture, and I think you do a disservice to the term economic development. And so for me, it was also saying, I believe you have to start focusing on the next generation of companies. That we have businesses here that I call enterprise businesses, large employers. They're the staples of our community. Our city has grown up around many of these businesses. But we have to start to determine who that next generation of enterprise business is. So Epic's a clear example. 1979, 1.5 employees, or quietly grows to now almost 6,000 employees with 1,000 plus construction workers on site almost year round. That's our new enterprise business. Right. But what's the next one? Right. Is it in there? Is it Virant? Is it CDI? Is it Networked Insights? There are great companies that are growing and focusing on innovation, but we could lose them because we're not paying attention.
Zach, wouldn't you say that that your approach, your philosophy, pretty much reflects the Madison business community. I mean, there are exceptions, and it's not a monolithic group like any group in Madison is not a monolithic group. But I forget the terms that Jennifer used. Former Mayor Cheslevich used to say it was a progressive business community.
You can be pro-business and progressive.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And I think
enlightened economic development was the other.
Enlightened economic development, but I think it is different. This is a different business community than what you might find in other cities.
Certainly, it is one of there are multiple juxtapositions that are challenges for this position. That is one. I mean, one of them is how do you be the traditional voice of business in a community that has not traditionally viewed business as an asset, or at least hasn't done anything to add value to the role that business plays in growing the economy. We've been heavily reliant on the public sector and I think taken for granted the private sector. And now that we're realizing that the public sector is no longer a growth industry, that we're starting to scramble to say, well, what about the private sector? And that means a wholesale shift in the way we think of things. But I think that ideologically, yes, I think I line up with the business community. I think we have very similar ethics and belief systems. Stylistically, I think that's where we, as a business community, need a push. That it's a style question, yep. Maybe not a belief question.
Well, that might lead into the next question, which is maybe the question of the year as we start off. And I wrote about it in Madison Magazine. Paul Phelan wrote about it this past week in the Capital Times. And it's this notion that Madison is trying to balance acknowledging and dealing with its problems, for lack of a better word, the challenges of any growing urban city, and the image that we project of being a great quality of life city. And there's some tension there right now. What's your thinking about that from your own personal perspective and the role of the chamber in that discussion?
Well, I think there's no doubt that we're a great quality of life city. The people who live here, we may turn inward and look at ourselves and say, well, this is broken, or this isn't working, but compared to others. So you measure performance by potential, right? And so we might underperform where we should be, and I would argue that we do. I think we are an underperforming city. Now, you would step back and say, wait, you have a low unemployment, you've got beautiful natural assets, you've got a world-class research institution, you've got a strong business community. How could you say that you're an underperforming city? And I would say because our potential is so great, that our potential isn't to just be good, our potential is to be great. And so the test for us is, can we be a world-class innovation center? Can we be a place where when people talk about exciting things that are happening, and not just some of the accolades that we like to talk about, best place to sort of walk your dog. And we get real ones too. I mean, we get some joke ones, but we get some real ones where it's the best place for young professionals to launch a business. It's the best place to grow old. There's the best, it's high ranking for raising children. And those are all great examples of why I think the answer to the first part of that question is we already have a high quality of life. The question is, how do we meet the challenges that we do have without turning them into self-fulfilling prophecies? That we have challenges in our schools. I don't think anybody who's in a leadership position in this community can go on with a straight face and not acknowledge that there are challenges. But we don't have bad schools, and it's an easy misstep in the commentary to say you have a challenge in your school, something that can be fixed. That's the whole idea of innovation, is to think creatively and to use imagination and innovation to be able to change the way that we do things. But if we just say something's broken and then don't come up with a solution to fix it, or if we just say we have something that is bad, that I think it, one, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and two, ultimately hurts our brand as a community.
All right. I'm going to take a break here. When we come back, we'll talk about how you approach some of those things given the realities of state and federal governments today, right after this. I am back with Zach Brandon, the new president of the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce. And we are talking about the Greater Madison business community. You started to lay out the agenda, Zach, and even talking about how we position meeting the challenges of this city and promoting all of its assets. That's got to happen now in a pretty uncertain environment in terms of state relationships and even federal relationships. Cities are operating differently now. They have to. What is your thinking about how Madison and the region, I guess, if this moves us into the Advance Now conversation, achieves meets the potential that you so clearly say is there in a very, very different environment in the state and in the country?
Well, it's an interesting question because we've changed our focus, or maybe laser lighted our focus at the chamber. That we just did in the past week, we did a full staff retreat, and one of the things that I rolled out was this idea of BEAM. So, and for us, BEAM is brand, economic development, advocacy, and membership. Those are our 4 focal points. Brand we just talked about. So it's not only the chamber's brand, but it's also the community's brand. Economic development is I think one, in many cases, has been ceded to government. I think that many of the business community have said that's the role of government to do economic development. At the same time, government is saying, we don't create jobs. We can create a foundation or an environment where jobs can be created, but the business community, the private sector, has to create jobs. So we're going to get heavily focused on economic development, and not from a reactionary standpoint, but to be proactive, to try to drive innovation into the thought process, to get government to think about how businesses operate and to set economic development policy that reflects what business needs, not what government think business needs. But the A in that is advocacy, and one of the things that we're going to do is to make sure that the Madison voice, the Madison business voice, which is a unique voice, but I think a very important one. I started off one of the first things I said when I was selected for this committee, or for this position. It's not a committee.
No. It's a big committee.
It's a committee with 3 people, 2 people absent is what it feels like. When I was selected for the position, as I said, you can't beat up on Madison. You have to stop. Right? From a state level, it's easy to run against Madison. It's easy to pick fights with Madison, and sometimes Madison does it to itself. But the reality of it is you can't grow Wisconsin's economy without us. Wisconsin cannot be successful. It cannot reach 250,000 jobs, or even 180,000, which was what then candidate Tom Barrett was saying, or 10,000 new companies, which is one of the other things that's been talked about that the governor would like to be able to accomplish. None of those things occur if Madison's not firing at full cylinders. And if you do things that push us down, that hurt our brand, that weaken us, then you're only creating a problem for yourself, a structural problem for yourself in your own effort. So one of my messages is that to the state level is that you need to support and encourage us as a business community, as a piece of the economy. At the federal level, and so we will also engage advocacy instead of just being local advocates. We've done a great job of being local advocates for pushing for things and for stopping things that may have been bad for the business or bad for the economy. But we'll start to get involved in the state level, and that means being focused on things like investment capital, making sure that angel and venture capital, which are, we talked about access to the capital being one of the things that people need to be able to start and run businesses, particularly when you're talking about an innovation economy like Madison, where you're trying to commercialize research that's being done in our university and turning it into something that can create companies and jobs here. You need capital to be able to accelerate that, or even to ignite it. I mean, it's the catalyst that makes the operation happen. And we're also going to focus on making sure that Madison is treated fairly when it comes to shared revenue. So we're going to look at the flip side of that. That's not something that we've ever talked about before. We've always said, well, that's the government should advocate for itself. But anything that brings down the cost of taxes, so if property taxes in Madison come down, it creates an opportunity for businesses. It reduces the cost of doing business in Madison, and it's good for us and it's good for the state's economy. And so you'll see us more engaged at the state level. Same thing at the federal level. We've already started to organize a Madison Day at the federal level. We've never engaged at the federal level. We've got 43 members of our board who are the CEOs or top leaders of our major employers in this community and some of the most significant businesses. That this is an opportunity for us to take them to DC, to meet with our leadership, to meet with some of the government's leadership, to highlight not only what's going on here, but to showcase our voice, and so that they hear the voice of Madison, and at least when they're making decisions, we know that voice is in their head.
I shouldn't just leap right to the state and federal level too. The relationship with the mayor and city government is critical for the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce. How do you and Mayor Soglin mesh or not on some of these things?
Well, one, I understand City Hall as well as most people, right?
Yep.
I mean, I was a 3-term alderman. I made it part of my mission to understand the inner workings of that operation, particularly from the budget. I took it from the budget standpoint. One of the things I was known for was dissecting the budget and really digging into it. And that helps you understand an organization. If you take it from the budgetary standpoint and blow it apart, you then know how the operations work. You know where the money is. You know what's paid for, what's not.
Sure.
From a personality level, I have a tremendous amount of respect for Mayor Soglin. I always have. When he was not in the mayor's office and he was private citizen Soglin, he and I would have lunch every once in a while, and I would just sort of catch him up on the things that we're working on, bounce ideas off of him. So we've always had a good relationship. I'm his appointee to the Capital Area Regional Plan Commission, which decides how this county grows and what growth looks like 20 years from now. So that's I think a statement of confidence on his part of my vision for what the county should look like, and also what Madison should look like in that operation. But we're also have I think the ability to be friendly in our disagreements, and that we will have disagreements. We've already discussed a few that are already out there.
Sure.
But I had a meeting with him last week, and 2 weeks ago, and I thought it was very friendly and cordial, and it went for an hour and 20 minutes, and it was very far-ranging, and we talked about a lot of things, and we were very clear about the places where we could work together and we couldn't, but the commitment was to work together, and I think that's the most important piece.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about looking at this from a global scale and about Advance Now, right after this. I'm back with Zach Brandon, who, as the new president of the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce, will oversee the first business expo of his administration. It's coming up at the Alliant Energy Center April 23rd. Business Expo and Small Business Conference. It's just an opportunity for businesses to come together, share ideas.
We've been doing it for a number of years. This year will be a little different. We're going to really push innovation. The event this year will highlight the things that make Madison great from the business perspective. So it really will start to put an emphasis on our brand. This thing I call, it's actually, there's a small group of tech entrepreneurs downtown who have this idea called Madisonium, which is, we're a unique element. Nowhere else in the world will you find the things that you find here, and they're using it to brag about the work that's being done here. We want to help adopt that. We want to provide institutional support for that brand. But it goes back to that same idea, and it will be one of the themes of this, is that these are the unique elements that make Madison so special and why we all love it and why you should want to do business here. Yeah.
Zach, as you know, there are urban thinkers who over the last couple of years have made the argument that no city can have a vision without some sort of sense of its place in the global marketplace, that global cities are the future. And that indeed a metro area of 500,000 is not too small to consider itself competing in the global marketplace. How do we position ourselves globally? You've had some experience with that, but Madison isn't there yet.
Right, and so the entire international structure reported to me when I was at Commerce, and I've traveled all over the world representing the state. I've been to China 4 times in promotion of the opportunities that are here, and also to help businesses have opportunities overseas as well. I've even recruited businesses. I recruited SETA from Italy to actually set up the North American headquarters, and so I agree with that premise. I think that it's one I've been talking to staff and to our board a lot about. And the juxtaposition, I said there was a juxtaposition before about being the voice of business in a city that hasn't traditionally listened to that voice. But there's another juxtaposition of this job, in that I know that companies have to expand their markets and have to think about global engagement, that it is required for the future of their business and for the future of our region. At the same time, I have to remind people that spending some of their money locally is good for the economy,
Sure.
recycling dollars through
Sure.
the economy. And so it's a bit of a balancing act, but I believe firmly that you have to be globally engaged if the opportunity is there for you, particularly if you're one of those either scalable businesses, a business that can grow to be a major job creator, or you have the potential to look at new markets. And one of the things that I told the board, and I don't think most people know this, and this goes back to that underperformance question for us, is that when you look at our gross domestic product by city in this state, and then you measure that against the percentage of exports of those gross domestic product, we are towards the bottom. We're on par with Wausau. I mean, the entire Fox Valley, the Eau Claire, La Crosse, Janesville, Racine, Kenosha, Milwaukee, all outperform us significantly. And that's a challenge for us. That one that we have to be thinking about is, how do we grow our markets as a business community? How do we think about selling our products, our goods, our services beyond our own borders? It's an important thought process. And there's such great opportunity here, and there are so many reasons why people want to either start business here or invest in businesses here, that we should be aggressive in foreign direct investment. That we should, there's significant money that, particularly in Asia right now, that is looking for a home, it is looking for a place to land, that we need to be aggressive in going out and capturing that money and saying, the traditional thought process, if you were to go to China, and the first time I went to China, my thought process was Shanghai, Beijing, Hong Kong, right? Those are, and same thing here. People say you want to do business in the United States, you go to California, New York, Texas. Those are the only places you need to go look. We need to send a very clear message that there is not only economies of scale, but there's efficiencies in doing business in the upper Midwest. And they don't realize that IQ corridor, that Minnesota or the Twin Cities through Madison, Milwaukee, down to Chicago is a tremendous opportunity for innovation.
All right, so in the minute and a half we have left, how do you position this with the work that Thrive's doing in Advance Now, starting 2013?
Sure. And what I'm telling our members, our team, our board, you have to be intrepid, right? You have to be relentless and tenacious in the pursuit of the ideas, and break down that word in intrepid is IN for innovation, TREP for entrepreneurial, and ID for identifiable. Those to me are the three pieces of it. You have to be innovative, entrepreneurial, and identifiable. And I think the same thing happens with Advance Now, is that it's the blueprint for how we grow this region. It has a lot of things in it, but that also means there's tremendous opportunity to take that blueprint and make it your own, to build your own home. And even if it is an 8-county region, each one of those counties, each municipality in that county can take something from that document and work together. And as I said in your article in Madison Magazine, it's about collaboration, not competition, and that's what we have to really remind ourselves.
And you've got ideas, though, for Madison's place in this that will be complementary to what the rest of the region thinks about Madison's place in this.
Absolutely, and it highlights the role that we have as a leader, and that I believe that if you are pushing innovative thoughts, if you are on the bleeding edge of idea creation and of innovation and of business creation, that creates opportunity and wealth for the entire region. If one person takes risks, it gives confidence to others to take risks, and I want to be at the forefront of that. I want to be there pushing our business community, pushing our community to be thinking about what do we look like 10 years from now, what do we look like 20 years from now, but I want the region as a whole to grow with us.
Right. Zach, thanks very much. Good luck.
Thank you.
Let's make this a regular occurrence.
Sounds great.
We'll come back and wrap up For the Record right after this. My thanks to Zach Brandon for being here this morning. Have a good week, and we'll see you next Sunday for another For the Record.